And I love guerrilla tactics. This is one of my favorite topics because most people, when they attend this class, they pick up a few tips or tricks of the trade. So tonight we're going to be talking about the guerrilla tactics, some of the best ideas to maybe consider when you're working listings, when you're assessing how well you're doing. We're going to talk about some helpful things that you may want to consider when you're working listings. So if you do have questions, just go ahead and write a note. Shannon is hosting and she's able to take your questions. So there's another Rochelle Wilhite. You're able to send her a message. You're able to send anybody a message or to the group if you have, if you also have some ideas that have worked for you. So if it prompts some ideas, be sure to share because that's how we all learn. Have some good news to share. A lot of the listings are out the gate. We had a good week this past week. More people are actually taking listings, considering doing having you come out and look at their house, getting ideas about putting their house on the market for the spring. So some good things happening in our office. We had a really good week this past week and would expect things to really kick off now that the Super Bowl is done. The week following the Super Bowl always seems to be a good week, so expecting some really good things out of the group. So let's just jump right in. So a lot of people ask me, you know, what's a long time on the market? And I will say it really depends on the kind of market that we're in. And what kind of market we're in is really an interesting one based on your local market stats. And there's another call that we do on market statistics and how to look at the market statistics. But I would guess, you know, just looking at the counties specifically, King, Pierce, Snohomish, Lewis, Kitsap, those types of counties, what we're seeing is that the days on market for those areas in the Puget Sound, days on market is around 30, 31 days. And so when you're working like a hyper local area and you're really drilling down, to keep in mind that the clients are perceiving this as a seller's market. 31 days on a market is not a lot of time. And so some of you are overpricing. I'll just be upfront and say that you need to know your statistics within that particular range. So if you have not taken my statistics or my market stats webinar, send me an email tonight. I'll be happy to forward the recording to you so that you can know how to segment your marketplace and know how to look at those stats that you find on the MLS to understand what is your days on market, because your seller is going to ask you, you know, when should we adjust the price? When do you expect that we're going to get an offer? And if you are just saying it'll be about 30 days or 7 days, maybe you need to look that up before you just give them an answer, because it's around 30, 31 days on average, if you're just to average all the price ranges out. So when I start the call off with the guerrilla tactics, telling you on average, doesn't matter the price range, a luxury home, a small investment home, a fixer-upper, King, Pierce, Snohomish, Kitsap, Lewis is 31 days on the market, it starts to make you think, am I writing my listing contract correctly so that I account for as much time as needed to get the property sold? And maybe I want to try a guerrilla tactic, really getting nitty gritty, and maybe I want to adjust the term with my seller. Don't be shocked. I've written a listing agreement that was only a 2-week listing agreement. I've written a listing agreement that was only 30 days. So think about your days on market and then have a good conversation with your seller about their goals and mirror and match what they're trying to accomplish, perhaps with the term on your 1A. And you guys know what the term, where the term goes, right? You go to the 1A, if you want to pull that up, Shannon, that would be helpful. We can easily just pull one up so I can show some of you that are new to the business. Go to Express Forms, pull up the 1A. We can just kind of quickly show you on the screen. The term is that term number 3, line number 3, the listing term. That expiration date, no, that's the list date, Shannon. So the listing term is what I'm specifying as a guerrilla tactic. That date is when the listing will expire from the MLS. That term is the expiration date in essence. So have some conversations with your seller. It's an advanced concept to understand the term. How long is it going to take to work with them? Quite simply, when do you not want to work with the seller anymore? When is your, don't think of it so general, like 6 months, 12 months, 9 months. Make sure that you use an expiration date that makes sense. And you can play with the date, because when it expires, that listing will get a new MLS number. Now, days on market's not going to change, but it will get a new MLS number. And many agents, because it has a different MLS number, days on market is not as apparent to them. And it gives the seller another opportunity to negotiate a contract with you. So I've written a commission maybe higher initially, and then if it doesn't sell, it might be a different commission rate. So you do have the opportunity, although you do have the loss potentially as well, if you don't know how long something takes to sell in your geographic area or the area that you're prospecting. So know what your competition's doing. If you know your competition, I know in other firms, traditional firms, they're doing 6% and they're doing 6-month listings. I could go in knowing that I'm against, say, the Cascade group. I'm just pulling one out of the Cascade team, and I know that they're going to go out and meet with that seller, and I'm going in for the interview, and I know that they do a 6-month listing term. Maybe I want to go ahead and change it up and kind of be aggressive and say, I'm confident with the days on the market, with the market statistics showing that there's a lack of inventory, with all the marketing and with all of the advertising that we do at Best Choice Realty. I'm confident that we can get your home under contract between now and March 30th or April 30th. Don't be so focused and rigid on just that 6-month listing term. I think you need to have some flexibility. That's a guerrilla tactic. Next one, Shannon. So let me go to the another, if you could pull up Best Choice Realty Homes, that would be great. Show them that. Perfect. Best Choice Realty Homes is where we place a lot of the resources and education and some other items of value that you might be able to download. And so I'd like you to go, Shannon, to quick links. That's a great place. And go to the seller presentation. If you could click on that, that would be helpful. Perfect. There's a lot of things you can download here. These are just PDFs, and they're print ready. So you can easily print them on your home computers, on your printers, and you can access this important information. But the one I want you to pull up for me tonight is the key market factors. It's on the right, I think the top line. So this one right here is really an educational piece that I go over with my guerrilla tactics, because many newer listing agents, new to taking listings and effectively selling them, understand what it takes to actually be a really good listing agent. And I would say that the most successful listing agent is able to understand the key market factors and explain them to the seller in such a way that, in essence, you're negotiating with your seller to help them understand how to properly price, make sure their location is set up. Sometimes that's already been selected. Unfortunately, that's sometimes already been, they make the comment that when you you actually make your money when you buy your house. That's a true statement because of the location. That already has been set up that way. So what you want to do is you want to understand the types of market factors that control a successful sale. So based on the factors, what time frame is reasonable for you to sell your property? That is going to help. So if you want to tinker with the different controls on why does a property stay on the market for 120 days? Why does a property stay on the market for 10 days? Why does this property get more attention than that? My agent's doing more marketing than the other agent down the street. It's not just one or the other. It's a combination of all of these types of market terms that help a seller sell at an average rate of time. So when you look at this, a lot of agents that are new to listing say, Rochelle, My listing's been on the market for 120 days. My listing's been on the market for why is it not selling? I don't understand. And we start to go through, and this is a good checklist for you. Did I properly price my home? And we kind of just go through this on the phone. Sometimes some of you have done it with text even. Or sometimes we've had sit down conversations to really understand what you've done with the listing and what I could advise that you do differently. And so it really comes down to this sheet. So if you're new to this listing process, you got to understand the location. Location is the single greatest factor that affects the property value. We could have a listing out in Issaquah that has been advertised improperly with the Renton School District rather than Issaquah School District that can affect the pricing, but mainly location is controlled when the seller had purchased the property. There's not a lot you can do except to make sure, and this is one thing I will point out, and this is a guerrilla tactic, to make sure that it's advertised on the MLS at a minimum in the correct location or the area number that it should be in. And some of you have the opportunity to list in a double area. So for example, there's an area, Bothell and Mill Creek. That's an easy one, where the property is located with a Bothell address. However, it's right on the border of Mill Creek. So by doing a double listing, as we would call it, or as they call it at the MLS, you are basically attracting two separate locations. Another area of where we operate would be Fircrest. We had a listing that was on Fircrest for over 200 days at one point in time. And the agent came to me and price was right. The terms were set up. The condition was fantastic. It was staged. There was some showings, not a lot. So that was kind of concerning. And the timing was, definitely a seller's market. So it didn't make a lot of sense. And what we found out was that the syndication that we were doing, the advertising and the marketing that we were doing was all centered around Fircrest. And as you guys know, Fircrest is kind of really close to Tacoma. Once we double listed it in Tacoma as well as Fircrest, we actually were able to find multiple buyers, and then there was a bidding war. So that's another example. So I gave you an example of Bothell Mill Creek. Over in the Kitsap, there's some areas like that as well. And then also on the east side, you got to think about where the property is located. And don't go crazy. We don't want to put something in Falls City that's really like Sammamish. I mean, that's not what it's set up to do. It's meant to be an adjacent or a complement where it's, adjacent, butts up against another city, or maybe the city changed their name, something like that, where the location makes a big difference. The example I used with Fircrest was fantastic because Fircrest was a newly incorporated city and it used to be part of Tacoma. And so many more people will search for homes listed in Tacoma online than they will for Fircrest. Some people don't even know where Fircrest is. So that's location. In order to take advantage of that opportunity, you would need to double list it. You don't have to do 2 listing agreements. What you'll want to do is fill out a Form 19 and check the double listing. And that way you can, you do have to pay. The MLS charges you $50, go figure, but they do charge you for the double listing, but it's well worth the money that you're spending to get it located in 2 different areas. So that's another guerrilla tactic that would be really helpful for you, especially in Pierce County, but there's all of the areas we service, we have opportunities like that. You just got to know about it. So that's one of the tactics. The price, when I'm talking about price with some of you and talking about guerrilla tactics on ways to better get your pricing set up, some people think I've done a good job, and I ask them a follow-up question. And one of the follow-up questions I ask is, when was the last time you did a CMA? And the reaction that I get most of the time is, I did it when I listed the property. And that's not good enough, especially in an area or a market that's transitioning, meaning maybe there's more inventory. Maybe it's transitioning from being a buyer's market. In Tacoma right now, it's a frenzy under 300,000. There's multiple offers on just about anything. And so with areas like that, you need to think about, is the market transitioning? It's becoming more of a seller's market, a buyer's market? Is there is how long are things staying on the market? If there are significant changes in how the marketplace is shifting, if you just do it at the onset, you're not doing your seller a service whatsoever. You need to be doing your CMAs at a minimum every month. Some of the marketplaces where things are fast moving, or that you're getting multiple offers, or there's a lot of sales that are happening, you may need to do it, and yours is not selling. You may need to look at the CMA, and you need to look at it more regularly. I would say when the market was tough with short sales, where there was a lot of inventory and things were popping up on the market, which that could happen in some of the areas we service, especially on the east side. I'm looking at that area specifically, at watching how Bellevue specifically, because of the different challenges we're having internationally, how that city fares internationally with the listings, and looking to see if there are more listings that pop on the market. My venture to guess would be that it will happen as we approach spring. And when that happens, we may need to do a CMA, not just at the onset, but more regularly. Like I said, at a minimum every 30 days for your seller. If you're not giving your seller a CMA, if it hasn't got an offer every 30 days, again, you're doing your seller a disservice. There's a lot of things that change every 30 days in the marketplace that we operate in. So that's another guerrilla tactic, is how often should I do a CMA? I would say you need to do it more than you probably are doing it. Buyer's terms. Another guerrilla tactic, some of you have not considered exposing your home or your property or your listing to more terms and getting creative. Some of you have been sitting on the market for a long time. You guys should know who you are, and you need to consider that the terms do drive the access to the property. If you only have, and again, some of you, and I'm guilty of it too, you get busy, cash out, conventional, FHA, VA, but there are other terms that may work for your potential seller that you just have not asked the question. You have not asked them enough about what are their specific goals and how can you structure their objectives to find the right buyer. I'll give you an example of that. I had a seller who at the onset was like planning on just, their son was living in the property. They were done with it. They were going to put more money into rehabbing their house and maybe building like a second home on their property in Edgewood. And so they were selling their house in Tacoma. And so one of the things I did, and I'm guilty of it, I'm just going to step on it, is I went ahead and just put, like you guys are probably doing, conventional FHA, VA, and I failed to incorporate other terms. And there was a time where I wanted to include, once I talked with them and we had listed it at a pretty high price, it fell through on appraisal, the appraisal didn't work on the VA. And so we relisted it. When I relisted it, that's when I had a conversation, and I should have done that at the onset. I should have had a conversation about what terms would the seller would meet their needs. Because when we really drilled down into what their goals were, they were able to finance a portion of it. And we ended up finding a property, or finding a buyer that was needing some help with their down payment. They didn't have mom and dad. And we were able to set another designated broker, go figure, right? Another experienced broker was representing that buyer, but saw that I'd changed the buyer's terms to seller finance or owner financing, as well as FHA. I couldn't put VA on there because the VA appraisal had failed. That was a mess. That's another class. But I had FHA, cash out, conventional, and it was a beautiful home. They did a great job of keeping it up to date. Again, their son lived in the property. So the condition was fantastic. The problem with getting it sold was obviously a challenge with that VA appraisal after being on the market for a certain time, and finding the right buyer that matched the seller's terms. And it happened beautifully, actually. And the seller was elated when they got just kind of change their investment portfolio a bit with the buyer's terms. So there's other terms than just the basic cash out, conventional, FHA, and VA. So challenge to some of you, go in and find out what those additional terms would be and be prepared to explain them to a potential seller as you're discussing maybe the sheet or talking about how we're going to get it done for them. The other one is condition. Property's condition does impact the property. I'm just going to do a plug for a future call. We're going to have a call in a couple weeks with photography, but I'm seeing a lot of you that need to kind of pay for some photography. and pay for a professional because the photos aren't looking so hot. If they're dark photos, if there's not enough photos, it's not showing the condition very well. And so you're going to want to make sure that you at least get some professional photography. That's something you can control. The condition is what the seller will control. So if a property is not selling, either the price, the location, the terms, the condition, the competition, or the timing are not set correctly. And you need to do some tweaking to make it make sense for your seller and to get a buyer. So condition is part of it, but there's a lot, you might take it off the market. That is a guerrilla strategy as well. If you take it off temporary off the market, you can do some adjustments to the condition, put it back on, and then you'll drive more activity. When you take it off the market temporarily, your counter stops. It does not continue counting. So you're not losing days on market. It makes it appear to the overall real estate public and the real estate brokers who are pulling your listing up that you may be doing something different to the condition of the property to warrant a second look. So that's what it does. And it is a strategy that has been used. And when used correctly, it does work to generate a new buyer. So think about that when you have property, for example, that may need some carpet cleaned, or may need some carpet replaced, or it may need some painting in one of the bedrooms. Maybe it's got a bright red wall that's turning a lot of sellers off because they're flipping through the pictures and they don't like the red wall. It doesn't work for them, or their feng shui is off. Something like that, or if you're going to do staging, take it off the market while you get the staging done and put it back on, either relisting it, or if you have the ability to do that with the terms, or going ahead with the condition and doing a temporary off market and then putting it back on. A lot of you just don't know the differences when you take it off the market. That keeps your term. So if you only did a short term, like I started out the call, that's a problem because now you're going to need to get an extension. Form 18 is a very simple extension you can do to simply extend the date on your term and keep your MLS number the same, but just extend because there was some complications with the condition. That's what you would use to get that extended and less hassle. If you want to cancel it, literally, does the seller cancels it? We've talked about that with the forms classes. You do need to get them to sign a form for that, a cancellation form. It's a withdrawal. It's Form 52, as well as the Form 19. Do not get in the habit of just listening to the MLS. They do not know. I just had to fight for somebody's commission recently. They do not know what forms. They rely on you and your firm to know the forms. So you want a Form 19 and you want a Form 52, and then it will be canceled. But that means it's free game. That means anybody else could go and after that listing and see if they can activate the listing. The problem is they're going to, if you didn't have the 52, they're going to have to deal, the seller would have to deal with paying us if one of the buyers came through and it was brought to their attention when we had it advertised, then they'd have a problem. They would owe us a commission. And Windermere and Best Choice Realty has shared commission in the past because of the Form 52 that was signed. So be careful if you're trying to call. We talked about expired listings. Canceled listings are also okay to call on. However, realize that they may be going back on the market with that agent, and you may have to deal with this Form 52 where you actually have to discuss with the seller, how are you going to handle the commission because of this provision. Within 6 months, anything that comes because of the other past brokerage's attention, you're going to have to owe them a commission as well as to Best Choice. So make sure that you know what they've signed on those cancellations. If you cancel the listing or it expires and the property has been off the market for 60 days, then only then will the counter go back to 0. And that goes, even if I pulled a listing, I'm just going to pick on John L. Scott right now. Let's say John L. Scott had a listing and it expired, like we talked about that last week. If it expired and it had counters of, say, it was like on day 120, and I'm picking it up because they expired it just last month, the counter will continue unless it's been off market for 60 days. That 60-day window is critical. That's much better than it used to be. It used to be a lot lot longer to wait before the counter went back to zero. And just recently in the last year, they changed it so that there's only a 60-day window now to wait before you actually can get the counter back to zero. So that's a strategy as well. I have a seller right now where we were undisclosed addressed. We were only showing it to certain people that had inquired through a specific website. It was very much a very limited listing. Come President's Day weekend, we're ready to go on the market, full blown with, but we've had to wait from the holiday to 60 days so that the counter, we don't attribute the counter to that 120 days that they were already on the market. We have to be off the market for 60 days. No questions asked. If it's 60 days, not good enough. It has to be on that next day. If you make a boo-boo or a mistake, the sooner you notify the MLS, the better. And oftentimes they can go in there and retroactively fix it. But if you wait too long, unfortunately, the days on market counter will stay with the property. Okay, last one, Shannon. Go to the MLS real quick. I believe she's in mine. Go into, this is the little trick of the trade. When you do have a listing, many of you do not realize, in fact, I had an agent from the last company I worked at, that was many years ago, over a decade ago, where we had a problem with, she had been trained for, gosh, she's been in the business 20 years. She did not know, she had not received training that she had access to this information on Matrix. This company she worked for did not show this to her. And so hopefully you guys are paying attention, because I'm going to show you where to go and get this information. You go to my Matrix, you go down to my listings, and you have access to reversed prospect. She said, I didn't know it was available because it's always grayed out. You have to check the box. And she's like, you got to be kidding me. For 10 years, I didn't know this existed. So go ahead and do the Squim one, Shannon. Check the box on Squim. And then click on reverse prospect. So I'm on Squim because we're on 2 MLSs out in Squim. So I'm able to actually see visibility. But you have, look at these reverse prospecting. You have hearts next to people's names. You've got dates that it was sent, how many counts that the listing generated. And you could see all of the email addresses and all the phone numbers and the office phone numbers. So what a great list in Squim, especially if you're going to remarket, take it off the market, put it back on, see if you can get feedback for your seller. I would consider this a call list, and you are not going to get fined. Another agent said, well, I think you get fined if you call the agents and you're trying to solicit business. If you're reverse prospecting, there is no violation for that. You actually can call, text, email. In fact, the MLS makes it fairly easy. If you wanted to send them an email, click on Christine Cray. Yep, you have to click on their name. I don't use the subject line. I hate the subject line. When agents do that to me, it bugs me. It's like, because I know they're just being lazy. But you have a question or just feedback about my listing. Could you just do that one? Feedback about my listing. There we go. Put comma, please reply on the subject, please. And then in Christine, I wanted to check in and see if your client still had interest. Realize that they're going to actually include the link to the actual MLS number in your email. So that's already done for you. They have your name, they have your signature. That's already part of it as well, as long as you have your settings set up correctly in the MLS. But you want to sound personal and you don't want to be long-winded. You don't need to copy and paste pictures or add more photos. If you have a virtual tour and you've paid a lot of money for the virtual tour, why not throw that onto the link? You could simply copy and paste the link right into your email here. I would not be wordy though. I want to check and see if your client still had interest in this listing. We did a lot of updates and think your buyer or future buyer may have interest. Please click on the link and simply reply to this email. There's my call to action. You always want a call to action. Short, sweet emails are working really well, but you gotta have a call to action. Please click on the link and simply reply this email to let me know what you think. I will gladly return the favor when I see your listing. And then have a great night. Comma. You don't need anything else. You can put your name. It kind of will put your signature. Go ahead and put my name on it too, so she knows that the designated broker signed, not Lynette. And then go ahead and click send. That I didn't care. I don't even care if Lynette didn't like me doing that. I'm sure she'd be fine with it. But that is a touch point, and you should probably, if you're representing the seller and the house is not sold and you have not done reverse prospecting, you're missing out on an opportunity to get connected with a prospective buyer. You could sort it by date sent. Click on date sent, Shannon. So you click on it, it sorts it for you. If it says never date sent, I think that he probably set that up for himself. But why not have a conversation with Steve Crossland in Port Townsend and just maybe get some feedback? You know, is my price too high? I've had conversations or text messages with agents just trying to understand, you know, if they like the picture on the front, or if they would have, if their buyers, if they think of a different front photo would be better than the one that we're showcasing. Whatever it may be, if you can strike up a dialogue, the chances are they're going to know somebody, or they're going to be reminded of how professional you were as a Best Choice Realty agent. And I got to tell you, many agents don't even know that this reverse prospecting even exists. They have not been trained on it. So, you know, use that again, be personal, be succinct. Don't put this long-winded email. I won't read it. I got tons of emails I'm going through. Offer to reciprocate, and again, be professional. If you were to call or text them, be concerned about their time, and also just realize, and again, I do reciprocate as well. I'd be happy to reciprocate. You know, if you have a listing, I do say that to them. I would be happy to give you feedback on any of your listings. I've been in the business a long time. Whatever you want to say to really build rapport with that other agent, chances are they may have somebody, or they may know somebody, or they may be able to give you feedback at a minimum about the listing that you have. And I've done so much as pricing. Anytime you adjust the price, reach out to this group again. Anytime you change the marketing significantly, another opportunity. If you're doing an open house, go ahead and send these people an email or send them a text. Any of those types of things, the MLS has not prohibited us from contacting the reverse prospecting list. Many of you just didn't know it was here. Okay, I think I covered. Shannon, did I miss anything else? No? Any other tips or tricks or questions that came up from the group?
Not so far.
I would say, just type it to me, Shannon, if you could. I would say also, just to end with, if you guys have interesting or unique properties, you're like, I've got to figure out the psyche of the buyer. Who is my buyer? You know, there's nothing wrong with posting on our Facebook closed group, or sending me an email or text. I'm happy to have those conversations. Sometimes you get kind of stuck in a box, and you need to reach out and you need to ask more questions with people you trust. So don't be shy when it comes to stuff like that. We have staff members that are looking to update our records to make sure that we're advertising. We're putting in quite a bit of advertising money into social media right now, and we're seeing results from that, as well as pay-per-click. And we're getting leads from the listings that you guys are putting up. The problem is that some of the listings, I guess it's a good problem, they're selling very quickly. But if you're trying to get full value and really maximize the exposure your seller's getting, why not look at that term? You know, what are the market stats? Why do some listings sell and others don't? And a lot of times it's because the listing agents are more experienced, or have more aptitude to reach out and get help if they're fairly new to taking listings. Those listing agents that become successful and good listing agents, it's because they're initially, when they're starting to take more listings, they're asking a lot of questions. They're asking questions to the broker. They're asking questions to Danita, or to Nick, or to other staff members, to get another set of eyes to look at the situation. Don't think you have all the answers, because each situation or each listing or seller is unique. There are some constants, like I told you, that sheet that I pulled from our resource guide. that will keep things together or help you and direct you in knowing what controls or what widgets you have to play with. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you have any other feedback or suggestions to make these, to make the next few phone calls valuable for you, shoot those to me by email. And like I said, we're recording it. So if you missed a step or two, just go ahead and check out the recording later. But have a great week, you guys, and we'll talk to you next week. And I'm going to cover another seller aspect of working with sellers on next webinar. I think we could use a few more listings, and I'll come up with some good content for you to share with you guys next week. So have a great week, and we'll talk to you then.